Good morning, and thank you for attending our graduate school town hall with the provost and our associate vice president for research and graduate studies. We will get started here in a few minutes as we wait for others to join. Well, good morning, and thank you for taking some time out of your day to attend this town hall. Our guests of honor today are our Provost Tarhule and our Associate Vice President for Research and Graduate Studies, Dr. Craig McLauchlan. They are both new to this role, and Dr. Tarhule is new to the university. So I thought this would be a great opportunity for them to introduce themselves to you as graduate students, as well as sort of share their vision for their role. And then really this is an opportunity for you as attendees to ask questions. We would like for you to use the Q&A feature to ask your questions. There were also a few questions submitted beforehand that we will ask, and I will be acting as the moderator. My name is Noelle Selko. I am the interim director of the graduate school. And this session is being recorded so that we can share that with others who cannot attend today. So again, please feel free to use the Q&A feature to ask questions that you would like the provost or Dr. McLauchlan to answer. So we'll start with Dr. Tarhule. Please introduce yourself and share a little bit of your background.
Thank you, Noelle. My name is Tarhule, as Noelle has said. This is my third month on the job. I started here on July 1 in this role as Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs. And before coming here, I was Dean of the Graduate School and Vice President at Binghamton, part of the State University of New York system. So I'm really delighted and honored by the opportunity to meet with you all, because working with graduate student issues is what I did in my previous role. Before that, before going to SUNY Binghamton, I was at the University of Oklahoma for about 18 years, where I became department chair and associate dean. Originally, I'm from Nigeria, and that's where I did my first degree and master's degree before I went on to Canada, McMaster University, just south of Toronto. In terms of my scholarship, I'm a physical geographer. I study issues of water resources, droughts, hydroclimatic variability, and so on. Noah, I think maybe I should stop here. You go through the introductions first, and then I continue.
Sure.
Okay.
Craig, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Craig McLauchlan. I am the new Associate Vice President for Research and Graduate Studies. I report to Dr. Tarhule. I've spent my whole academic career, if you will, at Illinois State University. I've been here now, it's my 19th year. I started in the Department of Chemistry and worked my way through the academic ranks there, and was the department chair for 7 years before moving over to the Provost's office. I have my own past. I'm an East Coast person, so I was born in New York and raised there. Did my undergraduate at Harvard and came to the Midwest at Northwestern, and then returned to Harvard for my postdoctoral studies. I'm a chemist, but my interests are in bioinorganic chemistry and catalysis. I don't have as much chance on this side of the street to do research in that way, but my brain still likes to think about data and likes to analyze problems. Some of my research with graduate students involved, we looked at bioinorganic chemistry to try and solve some medical problems, including diabetes and leishmania. But I will let us continue on with today's topics.
Thank you. So what I thought we could do is sort of talk about, and I know Provost Tarhule, you've come in at an interesting time where we've been in the midst of COVID-19 and addressing the certain landscape of what that looks like. But could you talk a little bit about what your vision is for the university and sort of what your goals may be, sort of that, 35,000 foot view of what your passions are, or what you're sort of interested in learning about the university and where you see the university moving forward?
Yes, thank you so much, Noah. Since this is a very difficult time, as everyone knows, I think that even under normal circumstances, graduate students occupy a very unique position in the life of any university. Depending on what you're doing, there are variously mentees and mentors. In some contexts, they are workers. In other contexts, they are students. And that very fluid status can make it challenging sometimes for grad students to navigate exactly what their roles are in a university system. The other very difficult challenge that I think we're all familiar with is finances. It's expensive to go to grad school. And in many cases, even when you have an assistantship, it's frequently not enough. And so almost by definition, a lot of graduate students struggle with issues of financing and how to pay for all the things that they need. The other challenge, of course, is getting your work done. Research by nature is not linear, and for people who are just beginning to learn and work in the research arena, it can be very frustrating trying, first of all, to master the concepts and the techniques and hope that the results turn out the way you want them to. At the same time, that work is not entirely within your control. You're answerable to a committee of advisors, and sometimes you have challenges with meeting those advisors exactly when and how you want. So when you put all of this together, it's not surprising that grad students in general tends to have a very high level of stress and mental anxiety. And all of that is just what happens in a normal year. In this year, almost everything has become complicated by an order of magnitude, maybe several orders of magnitude. We saw at the beginning in late summer, changes to the Homeland Security regulations that were about to impact our grad students, especially our international students, very negatively. And those types of rules just don't make it any easier at all. And as we went into the semester, the fall semester, one of the things we struggled with was that on the one hand, we gave faculty the flexibility to decide which modalities their courses were going to be taught in. We immediately realized that grad students could be caught in the middle of that, because if a faculty member chose a particular modality, that if the student assistant, the grad student assistant working with him or her was not comfortable with that, how were we going to deal with that? So again, we come back to this issue of that very unique position that grad students occupy. And I know that all of this ends up impacting the students. I also know that sometimes it's especially hard for the grad students to speak up because they're worried about possible retaliation or how they may be perceived in their departments by the advisory committees. We try to do our best to encourage them, you all, to speak up, but I know that by nature you find yourself in a very vulnerable position, which I understand. So I just wanted to say that we are very aware about the challenges, some of the challenges you face. I'm pretty sure there are many others that you confront or have to deal with on a day-to-day basis that we're not even aware. My strong recommendation to you is to try and make somebody aware of what those issues are. I am very aware of the sometimes legitimate concerns about retaliation. And I would like to just assure you that we have very, very strong processes and mechanisms in place against retaliation. The challenge for us and for any administration is if we don't know that something is going on, and if we don't know how you are being impacted by something, then it makes it so much easier, so much harder for us to do anything about it. So I'd encourage you to let us know the challenges you're facing, any kinds of concerns you may have, and we will work with you. And I can assure you that our system for checks against retaliation is very robust. A couple of minutes here about what I think is my vision for the graduate school. I'd like to grow the grad programs. I believe that Illinois State is in a position where we can have more grad students, more grad programs, and I would very much like to be able to put some effort into growing the grad programs. I think there are a number of things we can do that are fairly easy. One of these is the 4+1 degree programs. So I'd like to be able to see us have develop a lot more 4+1 programs than that we have. It's not just about numbers, it's also a service for our students. As you all know, the entry-level requirements in the workplace continues to rise. I think we'll get to a point where most people will need a master's degree in order to be competitive for certain positions. So I like to give our students a leg up, if you will, by developing those programs that so that when they leave here, they have a master's degree and it costs them less, takes them less time to get as well. I'm really interested in looking at the time to degree process. So I think sometimes grad students spend too long, not always their fault. Part of that is the mentoring process. So I'm really interested in looking at checking what's our time to degree for different programs and trying to figure out how we can lower that. And then I'm really interested in also, the prestige of the program, the academic prestige, which comes from accomplishments. The other time I was talking with Noel, I think last week, and I find one of the things that came up was that we don't have a computerized audit system for grad students to do their degree audit. This was something that I was able to build at Binghamton University as Dean of the Graduate School. It didn't exist when I got there, but we were able to do it. So that's something that I'll be very happy in working with Craig and Noel in setting up also for the grad school here. So those are some of my thoughts about the graduate school. I think I will hold here, and I'm mostly keen to listen and hear what your concerns are, and then maybe we can respond to those. Noel?
Thank you. Craig, would you mind sharing your vision for the role? And I think explaining how research and graduate studies really can't go separate from each other, but at the same time, talk about how they go hand in hand.
Sure. I just want to start with, I'm a member of the provost team. So his vision is our vision. And of course, I'm new as well. And so we're in this together in terms of trying to go towards those goals. I think I have to start with that. So I don't want to add too much to our vision there. But in terms, I believe, as Dr. Selko had said, as a graduate student, my research productivity was a direct complement to the research productivity of my faculty advisor, right? I come from a discipline where that's true. That's not universally true. In some disciplines, the graduate student work is very independent. My spouse's graduate work was entirely hers, and her committee just was there as a sounding board as she did all her own independent work. But in an ideal world, there's a lot of leveraging there between the faculty members and the graduate students as you both teach each other. I mean, I became the expert in my discipline, and I was teaching my advisor about the area which I had done all the research in as a graduate student. So I believe that as though they do sort of seem stapled together of sorts in my role as research and graduate studies, but they do go hand in hand, because a lot of the research productivity that comes out of units and is performed by graduate students, often side by side with faculty mentors and postdoctoral fellows. We don't have very many of those at ISU, but that's also another way I personally was able to benefit and grow as a scholar. I knew I wanted to go into academia, so all along the way I was trying to get the professional development as a future faculty member, while as a graduate student, while as a postdoctoral fellow. And I think I'm really proud of all the work that our graduate school has done to provide those professional development opportunities, because, you know, when you go from being a graduate student and you're focused on your research and your classes to having to be in charge of everything as a faculty member, that's a big jump. And so I know we want to do things to sort of help students there as they grow. But I think Dr. Tarhule's comment about the nebulous nature of graduate students of being yes and to all roles, I think that complexity is true in the research realm as well, right? You're teaching and you're doing research, and you're trying to keep them both going. And I think that nonlinear nature of research is definitely something that is new to many in graduate school. And so there's those ups and those downs, and you want to keep that going, and making slow and steady progress is something that some days are easier than others. But, you know, I like to joke, like, when the sun's out, make some hay, right? So when serendipity is in the lab, lock the door and get some work done. And sometimes that's easier said than done. But it is a hard road. But all of us on this screen that I'm seeing have been through that, and we're here to help support you on your journey, because, you know, as an advisor, it's not about me in your graduate education, it's about you. And so I'm trying to bring you along and get you to meet your end goals, and helping you become a researcher and reach your aspirations is part of what we do. So hopefully that helps.
Thank you. So I thought I would address some of the questions that came in by some of our attendees before the town hall event. And so this can certainly, I think we'll start with Provost Tarhule, and then if Dr. McLauchlan has anything to add. But one of the questions is, what might the future of higher education become in light of the coronavirus pandemic? And what is ISU currently doing now to prepare for the post-COVID landscape?
Thank you, Noel, and thank you to the person who raised that question. It's a very good question, and it's one that we are looking at in the provost office very seriously. The first part of it, which is, what's the future of education after COVID? Of course, we don't know that, because, you know, the COVID has not. We're still walking through COVID. Part of that is going to depend on how much longer it sticks around, and how deeply the impacts are financially and also on our processes. But what I can tell you is that the provost office is planning a retreat for February of next year, a big academic retreat. And a big part of that retreat is really precisely to address this question, which is, what is the academic landscape post-COVID, and what should we be doing to position ourselves to be competitive in that landscape? So part of what you might imagine is, we have learned a lot during the pandemic. We have also invested a considerable amount of money, both in terms of faculty training and in terms of acquiring technology and equipment. Prior to the pandemic, trying to get long distance education or online teaching, for example, was quite a chore. And if anyone had said that an entire university could pivot to online teaching within a matter of weeks, nobody would have believed that. But because of the pandemic, we were able to do so. And so now the question is, having acquired this expertise and having acquired all this technology and equipment, I think it would be a missed opportunity if we were to throw them all out the window and go back to the way the things were pre-pandemic. In fact, I'm almost certain that things are not going to be the way they were. They're going to be different. And exactly how different they are, it's up to all of us as an institution to try to figure those out. And so we are assembling some of the best thinkers across the university to explore this question and to try to come up with some specific plans and strategies for ISU. So I don't have a direct answer for you, but at least that's the process we're working through. So sometime in February next semester, I would hope that we have some clear idea about where ISU wants to position itself post-pandemic.
As a follow-up to that, would you mind explaining or describing how this period of collecting data, information to prepare for this retreat, and sort of how you're going to take those recommendations and look at that in a lens of diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Yes, so we have not just the pandemic crisis going on, of course, we also have a period of soul searching for the nation as a whole with respect to issues of racial and social injustice. And this has added another dimension as well as a sense of urgency to what we do about diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm not saying that we wouldn't do it if we didn't have the kinds of unrest going on around the nation and really around the world. But the fact that they are going on and the very senseless types of brutalities and cases of injustice that we're seeing on TV almost on a daily basis have clearly added another dimension. And so the part of the question is, what do we do about this and how specifically do we want to tackle this? So we are having ongoing discussions with Doris Houston, who is the president's advisor. I've also been meeting with different groups, departments, students, organizations. I think I actually have another meeting with students in the EAF either tomorrow or the day after, looking at issues of diversity. So all of this is about identifying what the major pressure points are. So Doris is integrating all of these issues into specific themes because some of those themes cut across the different groups that are making the demands. And our goal is to try to identify those themes that we think if we could address them would have the largest ripple effects and impact on the campus as a whole. So Doris is taking those themes, she's putting them in the context of the climate campus survey that was done a couple of years ago. And then from there, building out plans that address each and every one of those themes. And I'm working very closely with her. So it will take a long time to go through many of these issues. But of course, the diversity, inclusivity, and then the success of minority students, those are the key three themes that we continue to work on. And this is a big part of the retreat. So diversity and inclusivity is threaded into every theme that we're looking at this retreat.
Thank you very much. Craig, would you mind speaking a little bit about the research landscape and what has been done during COVID, as well as what you see sort of happening beyond the COVID landscape and as students sort of come back into their research?
Sure, I think that as was mentioned, this pandemic, we don't really have a choice in the matter, right? And it's about how are we going to adapt. And I come from a laboratory science where, we we did everything in our power to not close in March, if you will, right? And that was not true around the nation. Around the nation, our colleagues at other universities were closing their entire labs, and most of my colleagues in the sciences at ISU were trying to stay open in some way, shape, or form on many levels to allow their graduate students to continue to be able to collect data and continue to be able to do their work. But as Provost Tarhule had said, we're likely not to ever kind of go back to the way it was before, because as a graduate student in the sciences, you often spend many long hours in the lab, and not all of those are as efficient as they could be, if we say it that way, right? And so there was a real shift to come in, collect the data, do what you need to do, and then do your analysis from somewhere else. Do your analysis in the confines of your home. And so those that type of research where you needed instrumentation or you needed the ability to collect that kind of data, that there were a lot of efforts to make those as safe as possible and try and keep those open. Where we saw a big impact was in human subjects research. It took a while for the university to sort of come up with some standards we were comfortable with to allow people to conduct human studies research. And depending on the nature of that research, if it was just interviews, we wanted to make sure that we could provide a climate, say within Zoom, where we felt like it could be, you could maintain, whether it was confidentiality, anonymity is a lot harder, but there were issues that needed to be overcome to be able to do those things, and then remaining in federal compliance. So making sure that we had the right types of instruments in our institutional review board, our IRB processes, et cetera, to try and create systems for doing that research or continuing that research as best as possible. But like right now, some of my colleagues, they do research in the schools. And so if you do research in schools, that's a lot harder to accomplish when a lot of the ways you would have done that research previously is challenging, because many school districts are not meeting in person or have shifted to a new model. So a lot of people are reconsidering the type of research they're able to do. And those shifts, whether they're permanent or temporary, those are big shifts. And so thinking about the nature of the type of research has been a big thing. I think animal research as well. We've had to take care of animals when we have animal research, the farm, et cetera. Taking care of the animals, it's important. We can't just abandon them until we reopen fully, et cetera. So there's been a lot of essential work that has to continue in that way. But I think people have really had to think about the way they conduct research and then the way we disseminate it. We talked about pivoting the university to teaching online was a big shift. Well, the way we present our research, right? One of the cool opportunities that I've seen in my discipline in these last 6 months has been you can get speakers to come to your class or your research group that would never have considered doing all this time to travel to Normal and meet with a group, but now it's just an hour of their time on Zoom, and it's opened up to all different researchers all around the world. And we're not able to travel to conferences in the same way, but we've really created some opportunities where people who would never have been able to go to the conference now can attend a conference and share their work in a totally new way, right? And how do you give a poster in an online setting in a way that you didn't before? So really thinking about the ways we collect data, the ways we analyze data, the types of questions we're able to ask or can ask, and then how to disseminate that. I think that's kind of the whole research enterprise, but we really have had to reconsider all of those things. You think about thesis defenses, right? I went to many a thesis defense over the last few months that were held virtually. We were all in the same building, but we were all in our own rooms scattered around the building. And so, I would not have thought that possible. But it allowed some opportunities for things that wouldn't have been possible in an in-person setting. So I think, like anything, we're going to have to adapt to these new realities and build on the things that we would maybe never have tried before, but take some opportunities. There's a lot more data sharing than there would have been in the old days, right? And that data sharing, as a scientist, I'm a big believer in data sharing. So that ability to share those data and share those results and share those ways you're doing things much more openly than we would have, because it's all happening virtually and electronically, is really kind of exciting. People are collaborating who wouldn't have met each other in other formats. So it really offers a lot of exciting opportunities. Is it going to be easy? No one said that, right? But I definitely think it is asking us to take a fresh look at all those things. And if I can, piggyback on the diversity, equity, and inclusion comments that Provost Tarhule made, like, it has to be intentional and it has to be explicit. And if it's not, we have to make those decisions intentionally. If I can throw in our work in town with the incubator project that's going on, we've been very clear from the beginning that if we don't bake in diversity, equity, inclusion to every discussion we're having, it's not going to be the same. And so it's important to make those comments explicitly and have those intentional discussions. And this coming from someone with, I have a lot of privilege in my background, and I have to be aware of that and bring that to the table when we have those discussions, but it has to be explicit.
Thank you, Craig. One of the core values of our institution is quality education, quality teaching, and individualized attention. Dr. Tarhule, would you mind talking about some of the resources and opportunities faculty and staff had to prepare for online and hybrid education, and really what your message to faculty and staff during this transition?
Thank you, Noel. Absolutely. I think faculty, by and large, I'm really impressed with the amount of work that went into trying to get faculty ready for teaching in online. I don't have the exact numbers before me, but the Center for Teaching and Learning, and also the work that Dr. Johanna Cuenca-Calino did with respect to developing a whole new process for framework for inclusive teaching. That framework, I think through that framework, they introduced maybe 21 different workshops. Please don't quote me on the numbers, but I think it's something like 21 different workshops that faculty went through. And what those workshops were trying to do is to come up with a whole new way of teaching that is holistic. You know, this is looking at students not just as people who come to class and take notes and leave. They have other lives, and how do you help them to succeed? So I was very impressed by the work that has gone on in that area and continues to go on. This is not a one-off type of initiative. We expect to continue to do these workshops. This is why Dr. Johanna was hired. So she is in the office permanently working on issues of faculty and faculty success. So we did that, and I think the faculty responded really well. We had about 700 faculty members over the summer that took workshops at the CTLT, trying to learn how they were going to teach in this new virtual environment. We've never had that before. That's several times much more than anything we've ever done at this institution in the past. So on the one hand, the resources were being made available to faculty. And on the other hand, we see that faculty were taking advantage of those resources and actually trying to learn. And so this is very encouraging, and I'm very encouraged by that. Graduate level mentoring in particular, it's always a one-on-one type thing. For the most part, you know, there are some programs where you take mostly classes, but there are also many others where graduate student mentoring is really the kind of relationship that an apprentice will have with a mentor, where it's a one-on-one type of individualized mentoring and attention. And during these very difficult times, one of the messages, one of the things that I include in almost every message I send out is the reminder, not that many faculty need reminding, but the reminder that we need to consider just the kinds of very difficult, unique, and sometimes unimaginable or unanticipated circumstances that students may be in, and to try to be both more flexible and more compassionate as we work with those students at this very difficult time. And I would hope that that message is getting through. I'm actually pretty keen to hear from the students what their experiences are at this time.
Thank you. And then I think really the last question that has sort of come in is about some spring planning. So do you have any indication of what spring course modalities may look like and sort of the timeline of that information to be shared with the campus?
Yeah. The instructions we are giving faculty and the campus is to plan for the spring on the assumption that it's going to look very similar to now. We think it is to the fall semester. We think it's highly unlikely that the situation will be significantly different in the spring. We, as I think most other people, are very anxiously hoping for a vaccine to be developed to try and eradicate or bring COVID under control. But we think the earliest a vaccine will come out will probably be late November or maybe end of this year. But even if a vaccine were produced, it will first be delivered to vulnerable groups, frontline people, nursing homes. It will take several months, I think, before average day people will be able to get it. And then, of course, we need to have enough people get it so that there is some herd immunity. So when you look at everything that needs to happen, it seems highly unlikely that by the time we come back in the spring, the vaccine would have made any difference. Therefore, the safer, maybe conservative way to plan is to assume that we will be in more or less the same kind of environment we are now. And therefore, our goal is to try to teach as many classes online and maybe have only those classes that are experiential, lab-based, those classes whose outcomes cannot be accomplished online to be in person. So very similar to where we are now. The other thing we're working on is the start of the spring semester. We have a group that is looking at different options about whether we delay the start of the spring semester, whether we start online and then try to go in person, whether we cancel spring break. It's a whole range of questions that they're looking at. And in fact, I think they will be sending out a survey either late this week or early next week that students and faculty have to fill out, so we get a sense of where the faculty stands on those various options. Our goal is to make a decision. My goal is to make a decision before the 19th of October, which is when registration starts. So right now I am targeting the 12th of October to get all those results and those recommendations back from the groups that are looking at it. We will have to run that by the president and the cabinet. But my target goal is to make sure that we know, right now we know the modalities, but also the start and end and anything that we may be changing with respect to the spring semester before October 19th.
Great, thank you. So for our participants that are listening in today, as a reminder, if you have any questions for Dr. McLauchlan or Provost Tarhule, to please use the Q&A feature and I will moderate those questions. I'm also going to stop sharing my screen so we can see everybody. With the potential budget landscape, could you maybe talk a little bit about any potential budget decisions that are being made and if that's going to impact any of our graduate programs in particular or at larger just programs in general?
Well, as I don't know if graduate students know this, but one of the decisions the university took wisely back in the summer is to try and do a budget holdback. So the state has given the university a flat budget, which means that they are giving the university the same amount of money that they did last year, which is actually quite terrific, given where we are with revenues and all. But that's just an appropriation. There is a real concern that if revenue receipts fall below projections, the state may decide to do a mid-year kind of budget cut. So to try and guard against that, the university is doing a 5% budget holdback. That means we will hold back, in our case, in academic affairs, about 5% of the money that we ordinarily would have spent. So that money will be held in reserve so that if we have to do a budget cut, we're planning everything as if we have 5% less money, so to speak. But 5% may not sound like much, but one of the things the president decided was that we don't want to touch people. So we're not thinking about firing people, doing furloughs. So our total budget, if you look at the total budget in academic affairs, it comes to something like 145 million. So 5% is calculated on 145 million. But 126 million of that is salaries. So the 5% that we have to deal with really is about 14 million and change. So that's what we need to figure out how we are going to how to hold, I'm sorry, the 5% is not 14 million. It's a little over 7 million. Forgive me for that. So it's about 7 million. So we got to figure out how are we going to operate in academic affairs with 7 million less. So 5% doesn't sound like much when you give the number, but convert it to the dollar terms, and it's a lot. So one of the ways that we're trying to deal with this is we're proposing to do no hiring, no faculty hiring this year. So if we don't do any hiring, then we can apply the money that we would have used in hiring new professors towards that holdback. And that makes it a lot easier for us to deal with. We're also keeping any kind of new hires in general, staff, administrators, to only those that are absolutely essential. So for example, if a department needs an administrative position because of licensure or accreditation, we will allow it. Other than that, we're not allowing new hires as a means of trying to deal with this. So students will not see any direct impact in terms of the cuts that we're having, because most of it is being absorbed in the provost office through these actions that we have. So I don't expect any immediate direct impact on students.
Great, thank you. Well, I do not see any questions coming in, and so I think this might be a good time to sort of wrap up and thank the both of you for your time today. I know it's always appreciated when administrators take the time out to talk to our students, and I feel that you really provided some answers on a very down-to-earth level, and we're very honest and transparent with our students, which is much appreciated. So again, thank you for your time, and we look forward to working with you both in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Noel, and thank you to everyone online.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you to those students who did some pre-submit questions, or folks who pre-submitted questions. Appreciate that. And Noel may kill me, but like, if there are more questions, like, please keep them coming, I guess probably through Rachel. And we do want this to be an open and honest dialogue. You know, there's a lot going on, but information is the key there, and we try to be as transparent as we're allowed. You know, so, but happy to answer questions as need be. So good luck to everybody.
Thank you.